Let me say clearly what this episode is not about: structural poverty. This episode is about the person whose external circumstances have genuinely improved, whose income has risen, whose situation has objectively shifted, and who is no longer in the conditions that originally produced the financial difficulty, yet is still reproducing the same financial outcomes. The income went up, the spending followed, the debt persists, the savings account is still empty. The anxiety about money is exactly where it was 5 years ago, even though the reason for it has vanished. That is not a structural trap. The structure changed, but something else did not. This is worth understanding, not to assign blame, but because the trap, once you can see it clearly, looks less like a character flaw and more like a reasonable set of responses to a situation that no longer exists. This means it can be changed, but first, it must be seen. In one classic study, 2 groups of people were given a series of loud, irritating noises to stop. The first group could stop the noise by pressing a sequence of buttons. The second group was given the exact same buttons, but no matter what they pressed, the noise continued. The outcome was entirely outside their control. Later, both groups were put into a new situation with a different noise. This time, all anyone had to do was move their hand slightly to a different position to silence the sound. The first group, who had successfully controlled the noise before, found the solution instantly. But the second group, who had previously experienced the uncontrollable noise, just sat there. They didn't even try to move their hand. They had learned that their actions did not affect outcomes. When the situation changed and the solution became simple, they did not update the lesson. They continued to behave as if helplessness were still the accurate description of their reality. Psychologists call this learned helplessness. The crucial finding was that this lesson became sticky. When people learn that effort is futile in one area of life, they stop trying in others, even when the new environment is perfectly winnable. The financial version is easy to identify. The person who grew up in genuine scarcity learned a lesson that was accurate for that environment. Don't bother saving, because the money will be gone before it accumulates. The environment rewarded that lesson by always taking the surplus. Then, the environment changed, but the lesson remained, running on old data and producing old outcomes in new circumstances. The trap is no longer external. It has been internalized as a belief that the noise will never stop. There is a related concept from developmental psychology called the window of tolerance. This is the range of emotional arousal within which a person can function effectively. People who grew up with financial instability often develop a window calibrated for scarcity. Abundance, paradoxically, can feel dysregulating. A stable bank balance feels unfamiliar, and the absence of a financial crisis feels like a crisis waiting to happen. This produces a pattern that looks like self-sabotage. Lifestyle inflates to consume extra income. The promotion triggers a new category of expense. This happens not because the person is reckless, but because the nervous system has been trained to a specific level of financial pressure and keeps returning to it. The window closes around the familiar feeling. The trap is not the behavior. The behavior is the symptom. The trap is the calibration. We can name 4 specific patterns. These are not failures, but a taxonomy of recognizable responses to old trauma. The first is financial avoidance. This includes not opening statements, not checking balances, and delaying tax returns. Avoidance is not laziness. It is a historically rational strategy. If looking at the numbers produced pain, and the numbers were not changeable, not looking was the less painful option. The problem is that when the numbers become changeable, the avoidance remains. Unexamined finances do not improve on their own. The second is income matching spending. Every time income rises, spending rises to meet it. The surplus never accumulates because it is immediately incorporated into the baseline of normal life. In people with a scarcity history, this has a specific texture, spending the money before something can go wrong with it. In a precarious environment, money held was money at risk. It felt safer to spend it on something certain than to save it for a future that might not arrive. The third is the identity of being bad with money. Phrases like, "I'm just not a money person," become self-confirming. This identity excuses avoidance and explains income matching. It is often a conclusion reached from the experience of navigating difficulty without margin or support. That is not evidence of incapacity, it is evidence of difficult circumstances. But identities resist updating. The fourth is risk aversion that has outlasted its usefulness. The person who lived through real precariousness keeps money close and liquid. Even with a full emergency fund, they fear investing. The job offer with higher upside is declined for the sake of lower certainty. The caution that was once protective has calcified into a position that prevents growth. None of these patterns is a character flaw. Every one of them was once a sensible response to a real situation. Financial avoidance makes sense when looking is useless. Income matching makes sense when money held is money at risk. The trap is not that you built these responses correctly. The trap is that they became load-bearing. Structures do not automatically update when the conditions change. Direction 1. Look at the numbers once without judgment. Avoidance is the most tractable pattern because it has a direct intervention. Open the account and read the statement, not to fix anything immediately, but to make reality legible. People consistently overestimate how bad the numbers are, which means avoidance protects against an anticipated pain that is worse than the actual one. One clear look breaks the pattern of not knowing. Direction 2. Separate the old lesson from the current situation. For each pattern you recognize, try to locate when it formed. Mark the distinction between then and now. The income matching that made sense when income was unreliable does not make sense when income is stable. Naming the original situation and how the current one differs creates the possibility of an update. The update must be made consciously by seeing the gap between what was true and what is true now. Direction 3. Challenge the identity last, not first. The bad with money identity is resistant to direct attack. The productive route is to accumulate small, contradictory evidence first. One statement read, one automatic transfer set up, one financial decision made with information. These are data points that contradict the old story. Enough of them make the identity implausible. The identity is revised from evidence, not from willpower. The goal here is to locate an agency where structural explanations alone cannot reach. The person in improved circumstances cannot be helped only by better structural analysis. Something has to change internally. Internal change requires seeing why a behavior was built and why it no longer fits. The trap was not built by failure. It was built by survival. The question is not whether you were wrong to build it. You were not. The question is whether you are willing to look at what you built, understand why it made sense then, and ask honestly whether it still makes sense now. That question is the beginning of the only update that matters.